Good evening, everyone. This is December 28th, Wednesday, December 28th. Welcome back to Dinar Updates after chat live call. Tonight we've got with us Rcookie, Mr. White, and Day Trader, along with myself, to cover some news with you guys. Lots of good things going on. There's been a bunch that's been going on for the last, 2 weeks, I would say. Wouldn't you guys say?
Oh, man, yes.
Just tons of stuff. Let's kind of start diving off into it. And I'll start first. There's some stuff that's been going on in our chat room a little bit and in a lot of places, and it's had a lot of people. It's been misleading some people, so to speak. And I've seen where people are saying that they're going to go get ready to make a down payment on their house and all sorts of things. And while the news is just outstandingly incredible, the type of stuff that they're reading and getting excited about is the wrong stuff in a lot of respects to get excited about, so to speak, because it has no merit behind it. If you pay attention to the factual news that's brought in with backup, that we do here, that Dinar Updates does, BGG does a great job of handling that type of stuff as well. You can connect the dots and ultimately figure out what's going on in rather short fashion. There was one that came in, and I'm going to kind of just wing it, so to speak, but basically it talked about a number of things. There's a couple of gurus from all over the internet that are saying things such as, it's $1 or a dollar doesn't make sense in the budget, but $3 does. Now that Kuwait has gotten out of the UN Chapter 7, that has been released from the UN Chapter 7, now they are becoming an internationally traded currency. I'm trying to think of some of the others. Help me if you guys can remember some of it.
The Kuwait 100 million.
Yeah. That's a good one. Where Kuwait, gave Iraq the grant for the $100 million for the road and that type of thing. A lot of people turn that into a loan, and they're loaning them the money because they're going to get it back in revalued currency. Where did you read that? Is what I want to know. Who said that over there?
Well, Hutch, we can understand how some of these folks are, I guess, running out and signing a new mortgage, based on this type of stuff, because we go to one of these more established websites where it sort of lists the date and tells you what Intel, News, Hound, so-and-so is saying. And,
right.
Somebody that's new to this would look at this and go, this must be credible. This person must be factual, when in fact they're being factually incorrect. They're saying stuff that is not true. And this one particular guru that is a four-legged creature that climbs up and down mountains says we know they agreed to do this once they revalue their currency, as they would pay them with increased value of their currency once the rate increased. That is the biggest bunch of poo-poo.
Well,
but then again,
Mr. White's getting worked up.
That's what a four-legged creature does when it climbs up and down mountains.
Right. Doesn't pick up after itself. Here's my question. This isn't Iraq and Kuwait. Don't they all of the stuff that they do when Iraq pays Kuwait something or Kuwait pays Iraq? Does Iraq pay in IQD to Kuwait? What the heck would Kuwait do with IQD?
Okay, the agreement when they came out of on June
and I know the answer.
June the 27th, 2015 is the historic day. The vote took 8 minutes. 8 minutes before the Security Council to lift the majority of the sanctions. And part of that was the agreement that they would continue to pay these war reparations to Kuwait. They are paying the war reparations, which started at $54 billion, and now it's down to $4.6. They've been paying quarterly off of the oil sales. They are, and what do they receive when they sell the oil? They receive U.S. dollars. The agreement is in dollars. That is what any country over there wants, the dollars, if they're being paid for something, because they immediately can use it today. They can go anywhere in the world with the dollar and do whatever they want with it. This revalue to be paid, that just makes so somebody explain to me, even if Kuwait said, hey, we want dinar and we want revalued dinar. Well, is there a certain note? Does anybody have them? Any of you listening to this? Do you have a IQD note that up in the corner it's marked revalued? Is it a little ink mark or something? What's the difference between one dinar and another dinar, whether it's revalued or not? It's all the same. So when you read this type of nonsense, y'all need to go, this four-legged creature is a bunch of hooky. You know, I'm not going to follow this stuff. I'm not going to go buy a new car based on what this guru is saying, because I know that person doesn't know what they're talking about. Anyway, I've sort of been holding this up for about 24 hours.
Hutch, when you first brought it up, I could hear both Day and Alec. The teeth grinding that you heard was exactly that right there.
Yeah, I thought that's what that noise was.
You knew the firestorm.
The U.S. dollar is the reserve currency, and it's the reserve currency of the world. There are other reserve currencies like the euro as well. I mean, you can. All you have to do is go down the list of major currencies in the world are reserve currencies, but the U.S. dollar was what those reparation payments were specified in, and so that's how they would be paid.
Day trader, because it's a world reserve currency, what do you think that maybe Kuwait is doing with those war reparations? Maybe building their reserves? Why would they want to build their reserves with a currency that currently has no value? So, anyway.
Makes no sense.
Because we know.
Which, guys, leads into another real quick sort of myth that needs to get busted that was out there about the whole Kuwait depegging from the dollar and pegging
to the SDR.
An SDR.
Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about the SDR, please. And is Kuwait pegged to the special drawing rights, or is Kuwait pegged to a group of currencies?
Okay. When Kuwait originally depegged back in 2007, okay, you remember the reason they depegged was because of the poor performance, the poor status of the dollar at the time.
Right.
Plus the fact that the environment at the time, the global environment at the time, there was talk of this Gulf Union currency that was going to sprout up, sort of like the euro. All of these Middle Eastern countries were going to sort of, join together and have a unique currency for the region, and that didn't happen. That fizzled out and didn't happen. And you can go back and read every single article from that time period and look at what was written about what they when they depegged from the dollar, what they actually pegged to was a basket of currencies that was never ever identified as far as the exact composition of the basket, other than to say that the greatly dominant currency within the basket that they ultimately pegged to was the U.S. It was dominated by the U.S. dollar still, but not only the U.S. dollar. So the thing that I'm reading and seeing more people sort of latching onto is the thought that the Kuwait is pegging to the SDR basket, which is not true, because the SDR is a term from the IMF that refers to that basket of currencies that they value, that's on the homepage of their website, that they calculate a value out that's expressed in the SDR number against the U.S. dollar. So when you see anything from the IMF, like any of these standby arrangements that you see, like they're in right now, or the four other ones that Iraq's been involved with, or if you see that those SBA loans, if you see the RFI, the rapid financing instrument that they had before, you see those numbers expressed from the IMF in both SDR value and U.S. dollar value. A country has the ability to peg to anything they want to. Day traders gone through that almost like ad nauseum with all of us, as far as understanding, what a country can peg to. But this is the point I just wanted to make about this particular topic. That basket could very well be the same currencies that are in the existing IMF basket at some point, but weighted differently, than what the IMF weights each one of those, with the new Chinese currency being added to the SDR basket. But it is not a direct link or pegging to that IMF SDR term that you see so loosely thrown around. The other thing, just real quick, I wanted to mention was the fact that when you look at, and we know for a fact that just within the last month and a half, the first review of the existing SBA from the that Iraq is under with the IMF was just done, and the consequential LOI, MEFP, and technical memorandum of understanding were just put out, as a result of it. I have in my library, I have copies of the LOIs that go all the way back to 2008, and in every single one of those, there's a little excerpt that's from there that talks about Iraq will maintain the de facto peg to the U.S. dollar. Now, my point that I just asked people to understand is that you just had the IMF conduct the first review of the existing SBA that they're under, and in the verbiage of that LOI, MEFP, TMU for 2016 that was just done in November, that same excerpt's in there. So if they were depegging right now from the U.S. dollar, right, why would the IMF include that in the thing that was just done in the LOI that was just done not even 3-4 weeks ago? Why would they do that, guys? Any ideas?
I'm sorry.
Well, maybe they're not doing it.
Yeah,
they're not doing it now.
You guys ever go camping and you have a gnat that flies around in your ear and it'll buzz your ear, and you try to swat it and get rid of this thing flying, this gnat,
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing that just a couple of the recent I guess sort of myths that are floating around out there, and how they correlate to or the efforts that are made to make them correlate to what we're all looking for and waiting to happen. So we thought we'd start off with with maybe those couple. And Day and Alan last night, when we were talking about going through the whole Kuwait reparations component, you guys wanted to talk a little bit about the remains and clarify what's left to do with Kuwait.
Yeah, if everybody could go back, the 3 years to 2013, June 2013, all the paperwork that was coming out, was pretty clear as to what remained, and there were the issues of the remains of Kuwaitis that were during the invasion by Saddam Hussein. They took people out of the country and took them back into Iraq, and those folks were never seen again. And that is something that the Emir of Kuwait and the royal family there wanted those remains. Something done about that. They just didn't want to go, oh well, they're dead out in the desert somewhere. Hope it doesn't happen again. No, the UN through the Security Council said, hey, we're going to hold this over your head until you satisfy the Kuwaitis. And I think there was one other thing. There was a border, the demarcation that was finally satisfied, but it was the remains and the remaining war reparations, as I spoke about earlier, and them finally satisfying this. Is it coincidental? Maybe it is. Maybe it is coincidental. I just think it's like we were going to call this talk tonight is pretty much a convergence of facts, of actual factual information,
and reality.
And reality that points us towards reality. Now, let me mention to you, right on the heels of them announcing this thing with the Security Council or satisfying the Security Council requirements, these MOUs, these Memorandum of Understanding that Kuwait signed with Iraq, and it deals with logistics and infrastructure and building a highway and all that stuff. If anything, Iraq has known because they've been negotiating this. It's a memorandum, meaning it's written on paper. They just didn't do it last night and say, hey, let's get together and sign this thing. This is something that's been negotiated. I can see how Kuwait, for the past several months, and saying, yeah, we're ready to sign that. We're ready to do that. We're ready to continue investing in Iraq. But you know what? How about let's finish up with these last two items here. You do what you need to do, and we're ready to sign this. I think that is more of a plausible happening than it having anything to do with the revaluation. And what's your thoughts?
Jay?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Robert, you covered the basket of currencies really well, and Alan just covered the reparations and the remains issue. Those were the key elements there.
And what about insofar as what you're seeing? Because the news that came out today with the signing of these 4 MOUs toward culture, industry, security, and transport, and I sent everybody emails today saying basically wait till the gurus get a hold of this, because if they're stretching. If they're sculpting, getting the Play-Doh out and sculpting an RV happening because Kuwait gave them $100-something million to fix roads and humanitarian aid, imagine what they're going to do with this news out today with 4 MOUs being signed. And the point that I was making is that just ask yourself this, folks that start reading gurus, try to make that into something. A mountain out of a molehill kind of a thing. Imagine what makes these MOUs towards these ends any different than any of the other border countries that Iraq has MOUs with, like Iran or Saudi Arabia or Jordan or Syria or any of them. So,
well, we've seen Jordan in the news, Robert. I mean, just recently.
Yep.
First of all, the treble border between Jordan and Iraq, and then the natural gas pipeline. I mean, right. Iraq has gone to all of its neighboring countries looking for trade deals, for financial help, rebuilding the infrastructure of their country, because of the trade arrangement. It's to facilitate that trading arrangement and the relationship between those countries, and to strengthen that. Iraq is looking for help, and that's what we just saw them complete with Kuwait with these 4 MOUs.
Right. And Dave, we were talking last night about something that, whilst more is being made out of these kind of things than, like I said, mountains out of molehills. There was a little piece of news that maybe you want to go in and talk about this a little bit, that sort of flew under the radar, that was related to Kuwait, and really did address a really big deal when it comes to the relations between the two countries and their cooperation business-wise going forward. You want to tell them about the release of the Zain assets?
Well, that's a big piece of news.
Yeah, it is actually. Zain is a company that is from Kuwait, and they're one of the 4 companies that were issued telecommunications licenses, building the infrastructure, both on the wireless side and on the land side for the transport mechanisms. Zain was one of them. The problem is Zain, they didn't pay the taxes to Iraq that were due for doing commercial business in Iraq, and so they froze Zain's funds. And through negotiations with Zain, and I'm sure that some of the government officials got involved from Kuwait, but they have resolved that. They've reached a compromise or a settlement. Zain has taken care of it, and Zain released it. Well, one of the reasons is because there's still one more license that hasn't been filled out of the 4, and there are several companies vying for that. And I don't remember the name of it, but there's another one in Kuwait that right. wants to get involved in that 4th license.
So there's a method to their madness.
Yes.
So that kind of thing, flying under the radar and understanding the long-term value of those telecommunication licenses is just astronomical. So
that's a huge, huge money-making opportunity, whoever gets that 4th license.
Right. So at least with things like that, where you could see the long-term implications of something like that, and these two parties, these two neighbors, working with each other to facilitate some kind of an understanding or an agreement or something, toward that end, makes more sense than Kuwait, along with every other nation on the planet that went to the donor conference earlier this year and committed grants and loans and monies for humanitarian aid and infrastructure rebuilding aid for Iraq. That has zero to do with what we're looking for. So
can I break in for a second? Yeah. One of the things that's tied into this a little bit, but it's also tied into what we were talking about a little bit earlier. There's an agreement for Iraq to pay Kuwait back, and I know that we've talked about this some, privately, and the agreement was moved into 2017. But I've seen where 2018 is on the table as well as part of it, and that alone should say that that repayment is not tied to any type of an RV. Can you kind of clarify that for me, some guys?
Are you talking about Kuwait, Hutch? Or are you talking?
Yeah. Iraq, with Iraq repaying Kuwait.
Yeah, Hutch,
a lot of people think that's going to happen any minute.
Is Kuwait recognizes that Iraq is got to rebuild its infrastructure, and more importantly, it's got to rebuild its economy, and having these forced payments, even though Iraq committed to that. And we've seen this time after time between ISIS and the price of oil, which may be a significant part of the problems that Iraq has faced economically, though it goes much deeper than that. And all of us on this call and listening to this call know that. because we've seen what's been going on with the corruption and so forth. But Iraq is dealing with those issues. All Kuwait is doing is working with their trading partner, and this they've got to do that. Look at the ports down there in the Basra province and the shared ports between Kuwait and Iraq. They have got to establish strong ties to be able to make those ports grow and work for both countries effectively. And so Kuwait is just working with Iraq to make as a trading partner and as a neighbor to help them get back on their feet. That's all this is.
I'll add something to that.
Okay, go ahead.
2 years ago, when the price of oil, the bottom fell out, it lost 60% of its value. Iraq approached Kuwait, said, "Okay, we got this down to $4.6 billion. We started off at $54 billion. We've been paying quarterly as agreed to, as we agreed with the UN Security Council that we would do. But as it has affected you and every other oil-producing country, we're asking for some relief." And Kuwait agreed to roll it to start the payments again in the following year. Let's see, that was I think 2014. They agreed to pick it up again in 2015.
14 going into 15, exactly.
Yeah, and oil didn't recover, so Iraq approached Kuwait a second time, and the UN says, "Kuwait, are you okay with this?" And they said, "Yep, we're fine with it. We understand, it's quite obvious, and we believe Iraq is good for it." And that's basically where it stands. Kuwait is not making a big thing out of this. The UN is happy that Kuwait is not making a big thing out of it because Kuwait sees the upside. They're going to make a heck of a lot more than $4.6 billion that's left on the payments by helping Iraq along the way. Because if Kuwait wanted to be a you-know-what out of this, Iraq could pay, but that means something else is going to go without attention. And the infrastructure...
You only have so much money.
They can only squeeze that turnip so much. You're not going to get anything left out of it.
Exactly.
So that's what I wanted to add.
And Mr. White, to your point, which was awesome, is the fact that, again, the folks just need to go back through the LOIs year to year, the budgets year to year, and see how the IMF, who is busy co-authoring and tutoring these guys in developing their fiscal discipline sort of platform on an ongoing basis. And you read those LOIs, and in every single one of them, there's mention to the Kuwaiti reparations and the fact that and the IMF puts it in Iraq's lap. Hey, guys, you owe this money, so you need to go get some kind of additional relief for that. And like Mr. White just said, it's in the 2015 LOI. It's in the where they moved it to 2016. It's in the 2016 LOI where they moved it to 2017, and in this one they're going to move it to 2018. So, as he just said, they're willing to work with them and understand that the IMF, as far as anybody that Iraq is indebted to, it's got to be accounted for in their budget. It's not just like it was in the past, the Wild Wild West stuff. Like, oh, by the way, that's right. Didn't we get like $340 million from Germany for like an oh by the way thing? Everything is accounted for. So
do you have that, Robert? Do you have that scratch a piece of paper? I wrote, I think, 200 or 300 million on it. We just got that. Do you still have that scratch of paper? Because I don't know where I put that thing. Did we put it out in the garbage?
Exactly, and that's so. Again, if there's anybody that is making something more out of I think we did a pretty good job just now of sort of outlining and clarifying what's going on, so that when you read these things, you can sort of follow along and make some sense out of it and call BS on something when you see one of them trying to do something or make something a mountain out of a molehill. So, having said that, guys, anything else on these MythBuster ends that we forgot or wanted to touch on before we go forward?
I've got a couple of questions. If you guys,
I'm going to go shoot me a goat.
Going goat hunting, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to go goat hunting.
All right, real quick, a couple of quick questions before we can kind of move on. This comes from a person called Godlover, which I don't see in there much, but comes in, and I'll read it as it has come across the screen. I have a rare opportunity to be in chat tonight. Question. We listen to AON News on cable and find they report the real news. I saw a body speaking this morning. He says 3 more months to complete Mosul. Only 25 of it is complete now due to U.S. fear of casualties. So considering Mosul and the Kurds' unhappiness, plus or minus Kuwait, is all this needed for an RV? And thanks so much for the call.
Well, go ahead.
Some of it we've cleared and answered already as far as the Kuwaiti deal. We've not talked about the Kurds, and Movak's asking is the oil issue a big deal, with the Kurds, and then of course
that's what I was going to talk about. Just by saying
3 month Mosul deal.
If there's anybody holding their breath, waiting for the Kurds to be happy as a sign for this to go forward, we're going to be here a long time.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I guess the way it is the Prime Minister of South Korea is going to be very hesitant to trade in the IQD because the Kurds aren't happy this week. Huh? Or the Prime Minister of Canada. I mean, I can see all of the leaders, movers and shakers that were at Davos, Switzerland, listening to the Prime Minister Abadi talk about what Iraq's going to do. They're all on a conference call going, well, I don't know. The Kurds, they're not happy today. And somebody would say, have you ever seen them happy at all?
Right.
So one thing you do have to be careful about when you're reading articles coming from the Kurds is who's it coming from? Is it coming from the government of Kurdistan, or is it coming from one of the political parties? Because there's a tremendous amount of angst going on in Kurdistan between a couple of the major political parties up there, and so right. You have to be careful about who you're reading from, because the only official stance is the one from the government of Kurdistan.
And the point is it's just like within our own country. All the political maneuvering, all the political issues inside our borders, within our states, has nothing to do with how the U.S. dollar traded today against the yen, against the euro, against all the world currencies. Same with over there. Whether or not the Kurds are happy or not, I do not believe it has anything to do with Citibank assisting the removal of obstacles for the free and clear movement of the IQD around the globe. And that's pretty close to a quote. So
great point.
We get hung up on stuff that are not relevant to what we're looking for.
Hutch, what was the other question?
Say it again.
Mosul.
Oh yeah, that was Mosul.
Mosul was the other part.
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that one because that's not what we're seeing. There was an article yesterday that just came out where the head of the Iraqi security forces is basically saying that there's less than 10 neighborhoods now left that contain core ISIS groups, and they're actually not having a lot of difficulty from those groups because just late last week, the command and control organization and location got taken out. And so these remaining ISIS troops have no leadership, no guidance. They don't know where to move people or equipment to, and it's they're just. So I'm a little puzzled at that one because we also had saw articles where churches were holding services. The Christian churches in Mosul were holding services over Christmas. And then we also saw articles where they're reestablishing the schools, and they've been bringing in teachers and the administration type people to reopen these schools, and they're doing that now. So I'm a little puzzled at those particular comments.
And day yesterday also, 18,000 Iraqi citizens returned to their homes and their areas right outside of
Mosul.
Eastern Mosul as well. So between that and the fact, and I know we talked about this last night too, about the fact that before the Mosul liberation operation began, when they were still monkeying around with Fallujah, the United Nations had estimates out for the displaced, forecasts out for what the amount of people that were going to end up displaced once they got into Mosul, where there was heavier ISIS concentration and more urban areas and and citizens and so forth. And the estimates that were floating were between 1 million to 1.5 million additional displaced to what were already there. Well, there was a report out just today that they've got the number at about 125 to 127,000. So they're obviously, when you see the counter articles about a body saying that, answering critics that did they stop this operation for a while and pointing fingers and finding fault in that, and he's basically answering back and saying, hey, listen, we're exactly where we plan to be. And I think that's evident in the fact that even the UN and all the experts were forecasting this many displaced and this kind of problems, and they're basically about like a tenth of what they forecasted. I think it's probably safe to say that they're happy with the progress and where they're going, with everything. So I don't know how much I'd read into that stuff about the 3 months, 3 more months for the operation to be done.
Well, either way, no matter what he says, he's not going to say what he really believes. Right. is the word he's getting from his field commanders. And, for him to start off back in October, just before this thing kicked off, and saying, hey, this year. Right. What do you want to say, listen, guys, man, this is going to drag out. We're going to be up there forever and ever. And, we don't know. No, he made a commitment, to clear his country of a terrorist group. And those guys that are going up there to fight it, they don't want to be going up there saying, gee, this is going to take forever. No, they want to go up there. They're motivated. They want to do a good job, and they'll deal with whatever obstacles they come up with. But, did I think 3 months is going to be a little quick? Yeah, I thought it might be a little bit quick, but still, the progress that they made is incredible. Because you think about this beforehand. What was the opinion of the world media? Was that Iraq couldn't even drive up there without getting lost. They would have a hard time even finding Mosul. Instead, what they've done is they've performed very, very good.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I got I have another question here. Any thought? This is from Jim Plants, our buddy Jim Plants. Any thought on the ISX opening on time?
No, we expect it to open on time.
Yep.
Now,
I mean, nothing showing
what's
anything
really
different. What
is Jim? What's behind the question?
Don't know.
We're very optimistic. They're going to be doing some stuff. They said they're going to do some stuff here in the first quarter, and we believe it will come after. In my opinion, it will come after a change in the value.
Yep. All right. Two more.
And Hutch, real quick, that
okay.
to Jim's question, the ISX law, Iraqi Stock Exchange Law number 74 of 2004 is one of the 8 laws that's earmarked for to be in front of Parliament and be amended as well. So. Which might be a good lead-in, going through those, just going over those 8 laws really quick of financial and economic laws of what we're looking for, and talking about a couple of them.
Yeah, and what Jim Plants was talking about is international trade, as far as being able to, begin international trading, that type of thing.
We're really talking two things here. As far as them opening on time, we've not seen or heard anything that would say otherwise. But as far as international trading, clearly that's not going to take place until the value is changed on the Dinar, on the IQD.
Yeah. Here's another real quick from David 334. A body dressed down Jabori in the amnesty law promoting kidnapping. Is that a big deal?
Actually, it was the other way around, but I believe. I think it was Jabori who was making some comments to a body, and it had to do the way the amnesty law was written. He's saying that the kidnapping has increased as a result of the amnesty law, and I don't know whether to read anything into that or not.
Gotcha. One last one comes from J. John. Does anyone know if the budget was signed?
There's been nothing that we've seen in articles that I've seen anyway, but it's not something I'm concerned about. Under the Iraqi Constitution, if the president of Iraq, who is the signing authority for the budget, does not sign it within 15 days of it being passed, it becomes law automatically unless it is challenged in the courts. And we've not seen that any articles that it was challenged in the courts either.
And a side note to that, too, other laws that required the president of the republic or the president of Iraq to sign the legislation in order for it to be official and put into their register, which is they call the Gazette. I've seen where he has signed a certain piece of legislation, and I look at the date and I go, that was 4 days ago.
Right.
So, yeah, it could be signed, and we may not read about it until after the fact.
You just don't know. Right. Okay. Well, let's kind of go ahead and start moving into Rcookie. What was our next thing we wanted to go over and start covering? I know we wanted to cover the 8 laws and some of that type of stuff, but I know with Mr. White and Day Trader, there were some things we wanted to cover as well. Which direction would you guys like to go?
Fellas, which way do you want to touch on first?
Take your pick there, guys. All of those laws are important. What you have to ask yourself on these 8 laws are they monetary reform driven or are they economic reform driven? This goes back. I don't know if anyone's had an opportunity on the Observer or the blog to read something I put together. It was the 3 financial channels in Iraq right now, which was monetary reform, the economic reform and the SBA and international funds coming into Iraq. And so the question that we see asked so many times, do all 8 of these laws have to be passed before Iraq can go international with their currency? And the answer is we don't know, but the economic laws probably are not a major impact on that particular issue. And maybe that's the best way I can say that.
So in that scope, Day, why don't I just do this? I mean, if I just fly through these 8 laws right here,
and that's what I was about to do, is call them out
and use that as a template against what your point just was, as far as the implications and what sort of one of those channels each one of these laws touches on.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so the first one being the central bank law, number 56 of 2004. So what? A specific channel, or maybe that might touch on a couple?
It could actually go either way. That could be monetary reform or economic reform, without knowing the exact content of what that law is, because all I've seen is the law referenced, not what they're wanting to change in it, to amend it.
Well,
because I think that goes back to possibly clarifying what the central bank believes their role is, because if you go back a couple of years, I think there was some arguing or some misunderstanding, and the governor at that time had to keep speaking up, saying, no, that is not our role. And I'm wondering if, because we don't know what the legislation actually states, do we? I mean, we don't have the draft.
Yeah, and I'll send it to you guys. I've got a copy of the CBI Law.
What do you think? Well,
Robert, where do you think it falls in?
Well, because it covers so much, the CBI Law, because one of the things we know that they're going to change and address is the fact that with the bylaws of the CBI Law, it actually outlines the fact that the board members that have to be a part of the audit board.
Right, we know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we know about that one.
Right, and we know that's changing because we know that part of the IMF stipulations in the LOI dictate that can't be any longer. They don't want them self-policing, self-monitoring, anymore. So that component of the CBI Law is going to be amended and changed to reflect what the new identity, for that, the Board of Governors being a part of that audit board are going to end up looking like. But there is when you guys see what's involved in that central bank law, I mean, there's foreign exchange things that are, segments that are in there. There's parts about the currency that are in there.
Okay, so that's mainly administrative activities associated with the CBI.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. The second one being, how about this one, guys? The Federal Banking Law, number 94, 2004.
Again, I don't know what is specifically in that law to know where it would fall.
I know one thing, Day, that they're going to do with that law, and that's going to be part of and this is also going to be part of the central bank law as well, is the implementation of the National Deposit Insurance Scheme.
Okay.
So that's monetary reform.
That would be part of the monetary reform.
Okay. All right, so we're buzzing right along here. Number 3 is the Companies Law, number 21 in 1997.
Private sector economic
reform.
Exactly. How about this one? The Iraqi Stock Exchange Law, number 74, 2004.
Economic, because that's a private company, the ISX.
Yes.
Okay. How about the Financial Administration Act, or better known as the Public Financial Management Law, and its incorporation into the 2017 budget law per the IMF?
Yeah.
Banking
we
reform.
saw elements of the PFM law incorporated into the 2017 budget, and so when that hits the Gazette, that's a done deal anyway. But I suspect there is more to that act than just what we're seeing in the 2017 budget. But regardless, that's still going to be an economic side of the channels.
Okay. Here's a goodie. How about number 6, the Integrity Commission Act of 2014, which will obviously this is going to deal with corruption.
I think that would be a GOI administrative issue.
Mr. White,
but it's geared toward banking reform, because that's where most of the corruption was found, is within the financial.
You're right. It is corruption, but that would also be tied back to the LOI in strengthening the corruption laws that the IMF is asking for.
And also, guys, what about the component of recovering lost funds, recovering stolen, funds, through the Integrity Commission and their role, that they're going to play.
They're strengthening that part of the Integrity Commission.
Right. So I think there's some, duplicity in that. In that particular, might touch on a couple, different areas. Here's another one: the Investment Law Act, for Law Number 7 of 2010, which
and that is
again
the economic side.
Right, I totally agree. Mr. White?
Yeah, I'm on board with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
And this is the last one there, Mr. Day Trader, and this I know you wanted to touch on this a little bit. The number 8, the Commercial Agency Law, number 51 of 2000.
And I think the reason that I wanted to touch on that one is if you looked in the chat logs, Robert specifically identified that one. It says this legislation aims to regulate the work of a commercial agency. Okay. And then he goes on to list what the intent is. What is so interesting about that particular law is this was written in 2000, and it was signed by Saddam Hussein. And so you can bet that this is not a law that's going to be favorable to anyone other than Saddam Hussein and his people. They were basically requiring any commercial business conducted in Iraq had to be handled by a commercial agent, and that commercial agent was required to be an Iraqi and living in Iraq. And if the applicant is a company, it shall be required to be an Iraqi and all of its capital owned by Iraqis. You think that might be an obstacle for outside companies, of international companies coming into Iraq and saying we want to do business here? That might be a bit of a problem.
Right.
So they're rewriting
this
entire law, and they started about a month and a half ago.
Right. And Day, or any of that DFI that they're so desperately in need of, that you so often have pointed out, that's going to drive any value change that you're going to see, and drive and support any value change that they're going to see with their currency anyhow.
Yeah, I basically had a wonderful meeting with Holly and her husband a couple of days ago, and we were talking about these particular issues, and her husband came up with a really great one. He said this is like a flat tire, and he said you pull the nail out of the tire, and you're still not going anywhere. And so you've got to patch the hole, and then you've got to put air in the tire before you can move down the road. Well, the way that we figured out the analog was that the nail was the revaluation of the currency. The patches are the laws that we're talking about, these 8 laws and a couple of acts that need to be amended. And then the air in the tire, which is the largest volume of this whole thing, is what you finally allows you the wheel to move down the road, and that is the economic reform. So in what he basically saw from his perspective was that flat tire represented where we are with Iraq right now. We're waiting for them to pull the nail out of the tire because that starts the process. And
what a great analogy!
I thought it was great. I told him I was going to use it.
That is awesome. So
there you
if
go.
You're listening, that is
Ollie's husband.
Good stuff. Really, really
he's a good guy.
Okay, guys. Anything else on those? Those are the 8 that our friend Salah and Alak and Al-Nasiri and Antoine in different statements have indicated, as well as the fact that we've seen these laws mentioned in that sort of basket of 30 that's queued up waiting for Parliament's return. So,
and they've said that they're going to address these laws immediately when they come back.
Right. And I read somewhere that they're coming back on the 10th.
Hutch, just briefly, I've seen some misunderstanding in the chat room about when Parliament is coming back. The legal session for Parliament starts on the 2nd of January. Okay, they do not meet. Parliament does not meet officially for the first time until the 10th.
Which would make sense because prior to that, you got your committees coming together. You got your committee heads getting information from the Speaker of the House or Jabori as to what to expect, and then then they bring everybody else in. But why have a couple 100, 300 people milling around and they don't know what they're there for, and they won't know until the committees get together and they know what piece of legislation is going to be put up for consideration.
And Jabari is going to be the one who prioritizes the agenda.
Yeah.
He's got to know what's ready to come in front of Parliament.
Right.
And that's coming from the various committees.
Mhm. Yeah.
Good explanation. Good stuff, guys. Hutch,
Okay, we've got we're already past an hour. I'm going to move on to something that I'm going to get a cackle out of this from a couple of guys. I read some text from a couple of buddies the other night. I want to read these texts and see if I can garner up some comment maybe. It starts out and it says, guys, before hitting the hay, I wanted to make this comment after this weekend's news. Keep the chatter down now. This weekend's news. This thing may very well be closer than we truly comprehend. The other one replies and says, I agree. You already know what I think. And then this one comes back and says, I'm beginning to think that this is too obvious. Is that so incredible to state? And the other one replies, says, the assumption has always been that they would not telegraph what they're doing, yet it seems they've been doing just that. And the other one comes back one more time and says, as I was told numerous times, this is no secret to the Iraqis. It's expected as they wait. We're the only ones that pretend that it's too difficult to understand, thus making it a secret and dramatized. And so the other one comes back. Where did you find that,
Hutch?
I don't know. I just dug it up. And so anyway, it says, looks like we're waiting as well. Yep, except we see what is happening as the Iraqis do. Now, with a couple of people
I'm going to send you a text.
Hey, I did not name names.
Next thing you know, he's going to be Snapchatting your pictures of the margaritas from Chile.
Yeah, exactly. But at any rate, think about this for a second, guys. In all sincerity, there's a lot of really incredible news out there, and it's granted that some of the gurus are flying around, and putting their spin on it, putting their twist on it to garner attention. I get it. But the stuff that we've brought in tonight and talked about is all very factual, and yet, it is still so exciting.
Well, guys, let me throw one of those things that I think Hutch was just talking about out at you, because I wanted to see what your comments were about this one.
Let's have a little fun. We've got a few minutes left, before we have to shut it down.
Yep. This is the one about the announcement where certain Iraqis got some pretty good news earlier in the week, relevant to the fact that the announcement was made that 3 ministries were going to start distributing their ministries' payroll electronically. And on that same exact day, an announcement was made by the CBI that they were waiving all electronic fee, processing fees and any taxes and things like that, for using these electronic services and everything. So
for a point of service, in fact, they actually say POS.
Point of sale.
For point of sale. So in the Education, Justice, and Transport Ministry. And one of the things that I know we were talking about earlier was, think about the impact that just a move like that, how ingenious this is. We know they've been taking notes off the street, as part of the Delete the Zero project, and we know that the country at every corner is crying for about the dire liquidity crisis that's going on. So think about how a move, some of the moves they've been doing recently, this being one of them, is going to provide some direct relief toward that end. What do you guys think about that?
Well, they just solved a big part of their liquidity problem by taking that payroll that would normally be handed out in notes, physical currency, and have turned it into digital currency. And because the biggest part of the payroll, the most of the employees in Iraq are government employees.
Right.
So how much of a dent was that?
Look at the size. Just think about the size of these 3 ministries: the Transportation Department, the Justice Department, the Education Department. That's got to be massive on the number of people that are.
That's all universities and all public schools.
Exactly. And what they've done is they've identified 5 banks that are going to be used for this direct deposit. And those 5, think about the liquidity that you just injected to those 5 banks. And then for the Central Bank of Iraq to come out and say, okay, also, by the way, we're going to waive all of the point of sale fees for you to use their debit cards. Bill, for you to make purchases. They're really working hard to facilitate electronic banking in Iraq, and this is how they're doing it, which is amazing.
And at the same time, you guys look at it like this too. Look at the other areas with the state-owned enterprises that they've addressed, because they've, in addition to the hiring freezes that they've agreed to, within the LOI and as stated in the budget and so forth. In addition to the 5-year buyouts of some of these state employees, where they're going to get a small percentage of their salary, basically get a 5-year vacation, be retrained. Those are going back to the workplace, be retrained in a viable sector, and then put back out into the workforce. Think about the liquidity relief that they're getting from all of those moves, in addition to the people that are still working getting paid electronically. I mean, it's really addressing the liquidity issue on multiple levels.
Agree 100%. One of the things that caught my eye about the point of sale is, one of the questions that I've had in my mind is how pervasive is point of sale capability in Iraq, and I think they just answered that. If they're going to waive the fees, it had to be large enough activity or capable to even warrant doing it. And the other thing that it made me think of is that that's really a clear indication for those that think Iraq has never moved out of the Stone Age that they haven't looked at Iraq today.
Right. And guys, I go back to the statements that were made about Iraq as a culture. Obviously, not familiar, not confident, not comfortable with the whole, plastic currency, a digital currency kind of a thing, and they're used to having to pull the wheelbarrow up, belly the wheelbarrow up to the bar to pay for whatever they got to pay for, and all of these things are going to, like they said, facilitate, the transition into a whole new economic sort of culture for them. So, kudos for them, for where they are, and when this is all done, to be able to look back and realize how far they've come.
Well, and we also just saw articles in the last couple of days where the CBI has pulled a bank out of the auction process because it's violated the rules, and then we saw like 4 or 5 banks that just got reinstated for the auction, for access to the auctions, and then what really was strange for me was that they closed the banks for end-of-year accounting. In other words, they need to close out their 2016 books. But the banks closed yesterday, before the end of the year. In normal accounting practices, you close the year out when the year is done, and then you do the accounting to close those books. And yet they closed before the end of the year. And I just thought that was quite interesting. It would give those banks an opportunity to transfer their accounting methodologies to the IAS, or the International Accounting Systems, during that downtime. That would be interesting. Just a thought. And then the other thing that I found interesting was that the ISX closed last Monday. If you look at the stock exchanges around the world, they don't close other than for national holidays, and so I just found that interesting that ISX closed early for the year.
And one more thing to add to that point, Day, was the announcement from the CBI to the banks to go and get themselves registered on the ISX by the end of the year.
They gave them to the end of the year. That's right.
Boy, guys, I sure wish Iraq could start doing something. I'm sure.
Yeah, bunch of slackers.
Getting old, sitting here watching them do nothing.
Slackers.
That's right.
Slackers.
Hey, I guess what I'm seeing here is a convergence of a lot of things towards the very early part of 2017. And oh, by the way, there is something else going on about early 2017. Seems to me that we had like 5 or 6 articles from the CBI talking about delete the zeros in the first, depending upon which translation you're looking at, beginning early first of 2017. So everything is converging down to a very, very interesting time period.
Yep, totally agree. In wrapping up here, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, Rcookie, you saved Day Trader and Allen from my comments that I made earlier.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah, well, somebody made a comment. Anyhow, I want to bring this up real quick because we haven't done a call in a couple of weeks, and it's everyone seems to, I'm getting comments left and right from people all over the place saying how much they appreciate it. This comes from David334. I want to just say it out loud to you guys. The call was and this is kudos to you guys. The call was so well informed, and Rcookie, Mr. White, and Day are so knowledgeable about the politics in Iraqi society, their institutions, the interoperability, and everything else. You couldn't put a value on this State Department level knowledge these gentlemen give us. I would love to look into the future and see the next iteration of BGG Research Organization. Thank you. So, and this goes to you guys. You guys bring the news like nobody's business, and you color it well enough to where it's, it's understandable. And I personally thank you. And there are a ton of other people all over Dinar Updates land and Internet land, I suppose, that are doing the same thing. I want to thank you guys for the in-depth, factual, no hype type news that you bring.
Welcome.
Very welcome.
Absolutely
And guys, I just wanted to say this too. In the last couple of weeks, there's been some folks that have really stepped up huge as far as the researchers and things like that. And I mean, you can't say enough about Loop. Loop is like a madman. Loop is completely
every morning he starts out and just keeps going, and I appreciate it.
Yep, he brings so much into the room. Always, kind words for everyone, and oh my God, the amount, the volume and quality of the news that he's been bringing in has just been, and that's not a knock against anyone else either, but he just really just going completely. He's a wild man. He's like
Loop and Bobby. They just keep going and going and going.
Right, exactly. So. Just wanted to get that out there as well.
Cool. Well, with that being said, I want to thank you guys again. Thanks to Dinar Updates, BGG, Miss BGG, and everyone else that's involved. Super Sub Girl, who does a great job of monitoring the room. Miss Mags, that does coloring and copying, and all the other mods and copiers that we have in our room. There's some good people over on the Facebook side, too, that do a great job. Julie in Washington and Pat and One Bobby and so many others that do a great job over there as well. Thanks to all of you guys, and I'm looking for BGG. Are you around, BGG, and did you bring the big red button with you?
I did. I got the button. Step out the way. I'm going to push it.
Put your fingers in your ears.
Yeah, here we go. Appreciate everybody for being here. These guys did a fantastic call again tonight. Make sure you appreciate them later. Stay tuned to Dinar Updates for more Dinar news, Dinar info, and Dinar commentary. We'll keep bringing it to you as we're able. Have a great night.